Thank you all so much for coming out on December night. This is the third year that Tecumseh Land Trust has collaborated with Glen, Helen, Nature Preserve on this Solstice poetry reading. And I know very many of you, but not absolutely all of you. My name is Krista McGaugh. I'm the Executive Director of Tecumseh Land Trust. And it is our pleasure to host this. I'm soon going to turn this event over to the mastermind, Davis here, who is our sort of poet in residence at Tecumseh Land Trust and one of our board members. But first I just want to say thank you all for caring about poetry, for caring about nature. It is such an important thing for us to take care of the places that we love. They don't take care of themselves. And so we definitely urge you to support Glen Helen as well as Tecumseh Land Trust. And if you aren't a member, consider maybe joining both of our organizations because we really do need to have member support. It's really what makes us tick. And what we do, although it sometimes feels magical, it doesn't happen by magic. I hope very close of a 9-year saga to do a permanent conservation easement on the entire 973 acres of Glen Helen. We haven't set the date for the party yet. We got to get it closed first, all right? But it's a really important thing, and being that Tecumseh Land Trust, though we work with 2 counties. We really started right here in Yellow Springs, and with the Glen is really our soul. I can't think of a better way to say it. It really is sort of our spiritual roots here in Yellow Springs. So we're real excited about doing that, and a really nice thing that we were able to achieve was actually to get some monies to go into an endowment for Glen Helen for stewardship for Glen Helen in the future too. So it's real exciting. So special place, special people, special evening. Glad to have you all here. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Davis.
Well, it always knocks me out to see all the cars start arriving. I think, wow, all these people are coming for poetry? Usually you can't draw 12 people together for poetry. But, you know, it's the charm, the magic of the Glen and the season. And ditto what Krista said, many, many people worked on this, volunteers, staff, interns, thank them all, beautiful posters and flyers. It is definitely, you know, not just me doing this, me and Krista. So I don't want to keep you from the poets much longer. So I'm going to, without further ado, give us the first poet. And I know how to pronounce his name. He told me. From the country 4 miles northeast of Cedarville, Steve Brody.
Just in case the lights go out sometime before we get a chance to thank Ed and his volunteer staff later on, let's give him a round of applause. You know, around the solstice, an old man's fancy kind of naturally turns to entropy. What, yours doesn't? So here's a poem roughly about that called Yellow Spring. There is nothing up the slope from that famous spring, but a thinness in the undergrowth. The trees there slender, bending in a wintry wind that wanders mumbling through the woods. I climb the steep and angled path, the cascade's melody in my ears. No sign that years ago men came to sit by this surge, drink the bright, bitter water, tincture of rock and rising sun. They thought to suck health from the hill's sharp breast, to sing again the life that had leaped from them over hard years. They drank deep, but they were wrong. The buildings are gone now. No board remains, their slow dissolution complete. And I see that the water that leaps from its cave, that cuts its rock pool cleanly and deep, must drop through a second cave, slowing and paling, on its way to merge in a sluggish stream. Where then the power, the compelling tune I could almost hum as I climbed the path to its height? Gone by degrees, joined at last to the slow-moving flood that finds the sea. And the wind's words, far off in the woods, are of calm and cold, and the bright falls end. As a kind of an outsider, I write a lot about this generation of farming. My wife's family has been farming for many generations. And the land is so important, but the climate is changing, and the change is hitting the farming community now in a hard way. But here's a poem about resistance to that change. In a dry time. They were on the febrile edge of age. Last year the flu, a new knee for him. Another muddy growth cut away from her face. And now the drought. Since May, not a shower. The mummified cornfield, stiff and wizened, rattled in a raving wind. Mare's tail and thistle smothered the beans. Their bees scraped at blossoms burned and barren, foretelling the winter death of hives. But there was earth inside them, loamy and deep. And they dug. He hauled himself into the old farmall to bury the crop, slice and break the gasping ground once more. Dust of failed fields rising to heaven like souls fled from their clay. With hope he sowed the wheat. But she pried up the okra, the sickly tomatoes, pulled the dead dill and the withering sage. Kneeling on the stadium pillow she kept from her son's last season, joy long past. She shaped the holes for the fall broccoli, seeded the new rows of lettuce and kale, poured the water, spread blankets of soil with gentle care. Because it was what they knew. Because they had never learned to stop. Because there was earth inside them and not yet above them and below. They dug.
Thank you, Steve. In my haste, I forgot to ask you to turn off cell phones. And also to thank my wife for the theme, Home on Earth. Our second poet would have been Albino Carrillo, who is the current poet in residence at the University of Dayton. He emailed me yesterday with illness, and he couldn't be with us tonight. So I'll do my best to get him next year. So, our next poet is from Yellow Springs, Heather Christie. Crystal. Right, Heather?
People often call me Heather Christie by mistake, but it's great because then I can pretend that I'm related to Agatha Christie. So I'm going to read two poems. The first one is about a tree. It's my favorite kind of tree, I think. It's an imaginary one. This is called If You Go Into the Woods, You Will Find It Has a Technology. This tree has a small LED display. It is glowing, and it can show you words, and it can show you pictures, and it can melt from one choice to another, and you are looking at it, and it wants you to share the message, but it can't see that you are the only one around, and that everyone else is hibernating, which you love. You are so happy and alone with the red and yellow lights. It's a nice day to be in nature, and to read up on the very bland ideas this tree has about how to live. This tree says, grow stronger, and this tree says, fireworks effect. This tree is the saddest prophet in history, but you don't tell it that. You are trying to show it respect, which gets tiresome. But then it flashes a snake at you. It's a kind of LED tree hybrid joke. And you could just kiss it for trying, for failing, but it can't see you, and it starts to cry. You gotta love a sad period. So this poem is called Nature Poem. Who likes nature? Nature poem. Yesterday it was marsh marigolds by the river with my mother, and in the afternoon forsythia with Chris. He dislikes it. And today it is grass again, with ants departing or heading towards each other to exchange an urgent message. Church bells are literally ringing, and then, oh my God, the train, and Jesus Christ, a butterfly, lovely brown with off-white tips, and every now and then irregular lavender spots. It's not necessary to write everything down. When a creature quietly tends to itself, I am happy. And by extension, earlier I thought for actually a very long time about ants and the impossibility of ant masturbation. They do not love themselves enough. They only love each other. Thank you.
From Yellow Springs, Mary Donahoe.
I'm going to read two poems. They come from my experiences farming on the high desert of Oregon for almost 3 decades. The first one is called Wild, published in Sisters of the Earth. Most late summer evenings, my dog sits about the door and howls. I toss under a full moon, admiring the hair on my legs, under my arms. By day, geese eat our grain and tolerate our trespassing. They look to the sky. Far into light, a V of honkers follow their hearts to the northland. When it rains, we strip and run through trees, our bodies free to dance, and in the night I'll make a song that satisfies like no other lover. And when sleep comes, I dream of shuffling through a forest, licking bark and stones, floor wet with leaf and pine, growling over a bed of boughs, breast hanging to my cubs' mouths. I, the woman who wakes in my house, to make morning coffee, to butter toast, I look to the sky, far into light, a V of honkers, follow their hearts to the northland. Coming to the country. In the beginning, you were born. A great wave moves you, and kicking wildly, you break the silence. Beads of light fill your eyes. People are waiting. You swim to shore. At first, you are so young. Great things befall you. Flowers whisper your name. The silent presence of trees comforts you. Love binds you to everything. Giving yourself over and over, your heart breaks and re-breaks, breaks and re-breaks. You rest in the arms of the world. Then one day, like a kite held by a great wind, you rise above your life. And on the horizon, a tiny spot spreads into a stain, covering everything. The world is dying. Even your mother is dying. You watch as friends disappear over the edge. Petals fall. Green is not to be trusted. You yourself hang suspended on a thin cord. But one morning, you come to the country. You share a neighbor's fence line, telephone, and cats. Birds come to the trees, arguing over last year's nest. You rise early and surprise a thin moon in the east. You stack wood, build fires, plant gardens. You peel fruit for the months ahead. A hummingbird comes to the fireweed, drumming its sea-green wings. And at dusk, an owl flaps grandly through the trees. The first frost surprises you, turning the plums blue-black, biting the leaf's edge with gold. Late one night, silence wakes you, and wrapped in a quilt, you stand under the stars, under Orion. You remember the story, how Orion tried to kill all Earth's creatures, how he died of a scorpion's bite, how Zeus placed him there in the heavens. You remember turning over a rock, how the ants carried off their white eggs, how you carefully replaced the rock and walked on. All the next day, you carry a particular joy. Like bread rising, it presses against your throat, wets your eyes, tunes your senses. That night you listen to snowfall, plink of crystals against glass. Close your eyes. Imagine the ants in their deep burrows, a great owl waiting in the trees, barn cats in hay hollows, Orion safely caught in the eternal sky. Great things have befallen you, resting in the arms of the world.
Feel the magic? The next poet is Maureen Fry from Champaign County, St. Paris to be exact.
My husband and I have lived on our 150-acre organic farm / nature preserve for almost 40 years now. And there are more than 80 acres there of woods and other kind of wild areas. And being surrounded by the natural world this way has caused me over the years more and more to become very conscious of my connectedness to that world and very aware of how I react and my attentiveness, I guess, to the elements of it, the wildlife, the seasonal changes, the weather, that kind of thing. And these two poems are, as you'll hear, very definitely influenced by that awareness. After equinox, signs are everywhere. Summer's hummingbirds have fled. Squirrels hunch over their digging, burying nuts. Maples spatter ochre on the lawn. At a field's edge, ragged corn stalks rattle their bones. The sun is sliding south. Around each golden day, the dark screws tighten. It's time to gather in, hunker down, time for taking stock. In the fading garden, a praying mantis, long as my hand and ravenous, gorges on a butterfly. And I, hungry too, for who knows what, hang in the balance. And this next poem is actually a Petrarchan sonnet, which you could tell much better on the page than you can hear it. It's called Solstice, in honor of. Wind bites, sucks my breath. I make my way over barren fields crusted with ice, snow bones buried deep in the furrows, a maelstrom of leaves in the sky's gray paw. to the woods, silent, still. As day shifts to monochrome, shadow on shadow, I lose myself. The world's mad spinning slows. At the frozen creek, the sun's last rays fall keening through the trees. But now, a spark of white, movement, a dying buck, crown of antlers, wild staring eye, and overhead a red tail screaming. At this dark year's long end, I slip soon into my nightgown and wait for the turn, cold in my bed.
From lovely Centerville, Ohio, Faraha Henry Jones.
I have one poem to share with you. Hopefully, the tickle in my throat won't get the best of me. There's water over there. For the last several months, I have been unable to write about much other than the killing of John Crawford III. And I would like to thank you for having invited me here today with the theme. It caused me to look back at the work of Paul Laurence Dunbar. So the poem that I've written begins with Paul Laurence Dunbar's words from a poem called Haunted Oak. And I used his words in different places throughout the poem. Haunted oak in winter, for John Crawford III, honor to Paul Laurence Dunbar. Pray, why are you so bare, O bough of the old oak tree? And why, when I go through the shade you throw, runs a shudder over me? I step on shards of acorn shell and pray my skin hasn't broken. The squirrels wonder why I'm so naked and ill-prepared while they are ready. They don't know about you or haunted oaks, so they just nest in the nook of my patio roof. I'm barefoot and solemnly aware. My soul hurts. No, the skin hasn't broken, though I'm barely breathing these days. Too often, I hold my breath. Sighs escape, a release valve of sorts. The bough bobs, as though it has been stripped of invisible weight. Nature's theatrics begin. Starlings, by the thousands, weigh the old branches down. They swarm the oak tree, only to light again into air. Overhead, a black cloud waving. Andante seems never ending. Why? Why these cycles? Sunlight is a mockery when the days are so short and the nights so long. I stand on the porch barefoot, hoping the cold goads my body to sense something besides the prick of acorn shards. Pray, why are you so bare, O bough of the old oak tree? And why, when I go through the shade you throw, runs a shudder over me? Thank you.
Although the current poet in residence at the University of Dayton, Albina Carrillo, could be with us tonight, we do have the former poet from UD, an occasional embodiment of Paul Laurence Dunbar, former poet in residence at UD, Herbert Woodward Martin.
And it made it worse. When I think about having to read out loud, it gets pretty terrible. And so I start to revise and revise. I finally stopped about 5:30. This is from my log of the vigilante, and it's all about slavery. And I looked at it, and the host said, "This will never do." And so I took out the pencil and started cutting it. So if anybody wants to buy a copy of it, I will edit it and put all the right things in. The titles are Seamen's or Navy time. So if I say 0100, it's 1 a.m. in the morning. From the log of the vigilante, 0100. I am looking for the land to repair my body, to save me from despair. I am looking for the waters that will wash me, clean me of this infected air. I am looking for the fire to purify me, to turn my faults into diamonds. I am looking for the air to sweeten me, to waft me with the smell of blossoms. I am looking for things in this foreign land. I am looking for courtesy itself. And then winter observation 1. The sky is leaden gray. A white silence envelops. A lone red bird sings of despair in a tree. Its melodies are soft, cold crystals. The bird announces with a cold disparity that annoys and torments. A breath of snow, a draft of wind shuffles a leaf on the ground. It rattles in the morning light. The sound of perpetual madness reminds in the scuttle of small things of what it is that forces us to move forward. My dear friend Gary Michener will say you lied, because at the end of Les Miserables I decided that I should move away from the American musical stage and not sing anymore. But recently I heard the great Jessie Norman, who has lost the top, that Wagnerian sound. And so she has shifted the gears down to a kind of voice that Odetta used to use. And I thought, well, she's younger than I am, and if she can do that, maybe I can shift too. But singers call that cheating, and so do black people. And so I thought maybe I shouldn't be doing that. But at any rate, I keep waiting for the Spirit to move me, and now it's my turn to say after Ferrara Henry. She's a difficult one to follow. So I think in the manner of the old Baptist church, this is what I have to offer you. Let's see if it works. Follow, follow, rise up, shepherd, and follow. Follow the star in Bethlehem. Rise up, shepherd, and follow. If you pay good heed to the angel's words, you will just rise up, shepherd, and follow. You will forget your flocks and put away your herds. Rise up, shepherd, and follow. Why don't you leave your sheep and then just leave your lambs? Rise up, shepherd, and follow. Follow the star in Bethlehem. Rise up, shepherd, and follow. Thank you very much.
By way of Antioch College, our next speaker is a native New Zealander, Antioch faculty, Raywin Martin.
Hi everyone. Hi. So I'm going to read some quite old poems that were actually written in Wellington, New Zealand, almost 10 years ago. And they came about as a way of recording experiences of kind of an emerging consciousness of climate change alongside kind of accumulating experiences of heartbreak. And that group of poems is called Climate Change Heartbreak Poems. The first one is called Take This Hand. Take your hand before there is no snow cold enough, before this big thaw. Take this hand before there was no snow cold enough. This is a big thaw. This was just a week of weather. We cannot complain. I won't be your meteorologist. It's okay. You are your own. When there's change in the wind, you'll be a face. You'll gurn good. We can meet at a conference on change, and you'll say something to explain why change is good. The second one is called Take Change. Take change. Remember to take care. You've set out to make change. Remember to take care, because once it notices you, it will set out to make change on you. You will receive what you have given right back from interpretation. And that's where the danger is ready to care, with interpretation. Once it notices you, it will set out to make change on you.
From
a solstice reading, the first thing that came to my mind was a poem I'd written about Stonehenge. It was my wife and I hitchhiking to Stonehenge, and I worked some of the theories about how those stones got there. The blue stones. We headed for a blue more monumental than we had ever expected. Only bluish gray in dry weather, while rain washed us to pale tourists. With rain, there is a blue tinge, rubbed and polished with human oil. We were the stones, towering, separated, buried where we stood. Deliberate transport had rolled us here to stand our impermanence next to some 80-odd stones, an abstract architecture of our past. A circle of uprights floated here on slow water by companions on dry ground sledges built to conquer all distance. Driven to run fierce tide races, told to compete with whirlpools and eddies, we too had survived, like skin stretched on articulated frames. For us, no altar stone, no primitive reason to want monuments erected by handiwork obliterated with piercing dust. Our temple was the blue hardness in our hands.
Also, coincidentally from Oakwood, Ohio, Bill Vernon.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm going to read one called Natural Grace. Give me the great blue heron's grace, taking flight from awkward strutting in swamps, his great wings beating air to lift that long bill tucked on his breast, those long legs flowing back under his tail. He drafts air on the edge of the city. I watch herons when I see children playing in sand piles, digging tunnels, building cones and castles, tearing down what they have built, always yelling and laughing. Those children soar along the edge of age, above the swamp I stagger in, dipping in muck for minnows and frogs. Like the heron, I am out of element because I have to be. But startled by outboard motors approaching, a sudden invasion of my place, I feel my shoulder blades flexing, lifting invisible wings. That was sort of a birthday present to Ed, who I think occasionally displays some natural grace. The next one is equinox, and marking a formal perception of time and change. Last night, the drumming on my canvas took me swimming in the rain. There were bats, I think, and silently an owl swooped by after something in the grass. On screened-in porches, children slept, their snores an echo of chirruping crickets, thin green frogs cavorting in the trees, and katydids. Last night, the mysteries surfaced, things palpable all day on the edge of awareness, felt but never talked about. What shocked me were the native animals returned despite their bulldozed exits. Last night, the dirt drank ambrosia, and the gulping settled me. Open windows let me listen. Lightning let me see. The grumbling thunder yacked and bands of raccoons savaged food from garbage. Last night the cold front coming brought migrating wings. It recolored leaves. I swam my laps among the sodden blocks of blooms we call our homes and slept buck naked to the air.
That was a great birthday present, Bill. When I noticed that this year's reading would occur on my 63rd birthday, I thought, perfect. There's no one else rather me. Spontaneous love. Thank you so much for that. The next poet would have been Selena Wilkinson, who was an Antioch College student. But Selena wrote me about a week ago and said, I'm from St. Louis, Ed, and I really need to go home and join the movement that is protesting the police brutality toward black males. I said, follow your conscience, Selena. Well, poets have really been brief tonight, and we stayed on track, and there's going to be much more. But last but far from least, I'd like to introduce to you this last scheduled poet. Her name is Minor Ruth Young, and I want to read just a little bit from her bio, if you haven't studied it already. She's been writing poetry since her teens. However, she has not until tonight, at 69, shared her work publicly. Ruth Young.
Thank you, Ed, and thank all of you for being here and for making me feel so welcome, because I don't mind admitting I'm terrified. I have a book that will be coming out in the spring, and it's called Lyrics in Minor Chords, and it's done in 3 portions: poems about life, poems about love, and artistic spirituality, which is poems about the artists among us and the work they share with us. A lot of it is not about Solstice. It is about living life and love on this land. My first poem is Woman of the Earth. Last minute introduction. Woman of the Earth. My once narrow waist has grown thick, and its roundness is nurture for the needy of the world. I am a woman of the earth, given to heal the portions the Creator has ceded to me. I have become rooted in the safety of the universe and all that thrive within. My thickness offers love, warmth, and all else required to remain strong in a world given to draining strength to satisfy petty needs. I am a woman of the earth and offer fields of grain on which to dine, and soft pastures filled with flowers to rest on as strength is replenished. I am a woman of the earth, and my girth will vary, sometimes heavy with needs, sometimes heavy with needs which must be met, sometimes slim and willowy, when all is well, and my mother the earth takes back what is no longer needed. The second poem is from the love section of the book. My love. My love is like a radio or a television. Its volume can be turned up or down at whim. And I am constantly channel surfing. A little more seriously, how many of you are familiar with Dayton Contemporary Dance Company or been to a performance? Wonderful. And how many of you have seen Mourner's Bench performed? Any of you? Mourner's Bench is a choreographed piece by Callie Beatty, and it is a small part of a larger piece called Southern Landscapes. And Mourner's Bench is about mourners who are mourning those they're mourning their loved ones who were lynched in the Southern Landscapes. Mourner's Bench, Callie Beatty's poem. The mourning has yet stopped as we remember those who occupied the mourner's bench and gazed upon, prayed over, mourned and buried the piles of bodies, knowing they would soon join the growing mountain. And the question was and is, will the joining be chosen by the God sold us or by those who sold us the God? Thank you.
The first poet I want to introduce to you during our open mic part of the evening is Anne Randolph from Yellow Springs.
Oh boy, isn't this a fun way to celebrate Ed's birthday? We dedicate this to you, Ed.
Oh, thank you.
It's called In Late Summer. Wind sweeps the trees, bends branches back like waves of ocean. The whitish undersides of leaves. Breezes build into a roaring chorus that crashes over purple asters and goldenrod, bobbing in all directions, holding fast to earth like seaweed clings to rocks. Wispy skirted seeds of butterfly weed float by like sea foam, followed by the clanging of chimes. I am gliding, my bench a boat, sailing among the swells.
Thank you, Anne. I hope I pronounce your name right, Jerry. I think I can. Jerry Papania? Jerry, please. Yes, from Yellow Springs, Ohio.
I sat down with the intention of writing a Living on the Land essay for the Land Trust, but I ended up with a poem. I won't tell you the name, I think you can figure it out. We are of the land, urban, suburban, and rural dwellers, one and all, we are of the land. Eons of time, burning, cooling, grinding, rising, falling, eroding. Lowlands, plains, rolling hills, mountains, lakes, rivers, streams, and wetlands, wind, rain, snow, and ice, we are of the land. Flora, fauna, wild and domestic, a constantly evolving biome. Cultivated areas, nourished bodies, wild lands, nourished souls. Soils, nutrients, and microbes produce food, fuel, and fiber for generations past, present, and future. We are of the land. Days lengthen and shorten as we journey toward summer and on to winter solstice. Ancestors bent by the will of the land, generations bending the land to its will, both with and without intention, sometimes with finesse, often with brute force. A legacy passed to our ancestors by the eons, to us by our ancestors, and by us to our children. We are of the land, stewards one and all.
Good job, Jerry. Just don't put in line breaks and just make it prose and it'll work. I can so imagine that red on white so. Jerry prompted me to make a real quick announcement. We are having an essay contest, TLT, 250-word maximum, and you have 2 whole days to get it into us. Hillary Jones just started her poem she read like 4 or 5 days ago. Yeah. So, we would love to have your entries. $100 is the grand prize, plus consideration for reading on Why So. And I could so hear Jerry's thing read on Why So, couldn't you? Yeah. That'd be great. Our next poet comes from Springboro, Carl Trepea.
Thank you, Ed, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
These are a bunch of, they're not actually poems, but they're things I wrote. I call them inori, which is Japanese for supplication or prayer. Beauty flies under the radar. The gentle whisper of a snowflake, the mumbling clouds, the cracks in the old cup, the perfume of gasoline fumes in the cold air, the kiss of the misty rain upon the cheeks, the cool taste of moonlight, the sound of the sun going to sleep, the laughter of an open field. This is where I live. This is my home. Devoid of bank statements, neither calendar or clock, success and failure do not intrude, though I have seen their footprints. No need for laws, since all is an agreement. Here where dreams are not executed at dawn, I wander clothed in robes of sunlight. The tapestry of town and country undulates to a hidden music. I observe the wake left by the frogs plopped into the pond. Upon the note of a reedy flute, the architecture of my house unwinds, as solid as rainbows.
I'd like to introduce you to Carol Stoner from Clifton.
This poem is about a farm auction on Route 72 that I happened to be driving by a few years ago when it was almost over. It's called Big Feet. The old farmer pulled up his red pickup and hollered, "Is it over?" The auctioneer called out, "Just a few things left in the barn. Been raining all day. Watch the mud." "What will you give me for these sheep gates? I hear 15, 20, 25, 30, sold." "Nice horse trout. Do I hear 10, 20, 30, sold?" "Don't make me load up these barrels. 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, sold." Oh, the takeaways, both grand and not, of a tuned tractor and a dented horse trout. For Thrifty Tom, always repaired and never replaced. Horses and sheep, farmer and wife and children and all, marched quietly to their new owners, or new graves, or new Beaver Creek homes. When that evening setting sun lay out her forgiving purple mantle, you could see dimly that Timmy's sled still hung from the rafters, and Mom's daisies stayed assuredly by the back kitchen door. And you could hear the coming winds creaking of Grandpa's copper roostered weather vane dithering decidedly between east and north, and the abandoned cats meowing for big feet.
And also from Yellow Springs, Ken Huber.
A very short poem called Ars Poetica. I can play God. I can make a play pebble and a play pond. And you know, I can also make the winding circle sound.
Thank you, Ken. A lot of you will know this man, Conrad Belliette from the wilds of Pitchin, Ohio.
I wanted to look up and see if I could find a corner here. Anyway, as some of you know, I've been reading poetry for many years on Conrad's Corner. Once in a while, I even write one. I don't write very many because I know good poetry from bad, and what I write is not very good. But when I saw the topic for tonight, poetry of the natural world and human spirit, I remembered one, and oddly enough, it came to me in the mail yesterday, rejected for another time. But there's no law against reading rejected poetry. It's called Baptism Remembered. The trickle of water, anytime, anywhere, from a faucet or a storm or a stream, triggers my memory. Camp Mensch Mill, 1939. Clang of the morning bell, dash down the hill from morning dip, splash in the lake, quick run back to dress, another clang for morning watch. New Testament in hand, I wind my way through the brambles to sit on my stone by the stream, to listen and hear what the water says. John 3:16. For God so loved the world, God loved me, I loved God, and heard his call in the trickle of the stream. Even now, as my dream takes me back to the time when I simply believed what the stream said then. Beyond all that, I am delighted to see so many people here, so many poets here, to hear so much good poetry. And I want to extend an invitation to those poets who have some published poems and have not heard their poetry read on WYSO to see me after the reading. We can exchange emails. I'll go over the minor items expected from poetry read. And there are probably a dozen people here whose poetry is already read. And just this afternoon, I finished a delightful recording session with Herb Martin, who is one of the most wonderful readers and sings as well, as you've heard tonight. So thanks for listening, and see you
Conrad's much too humble to tell you that he won first place in the Montgomery Library,
In the old folk,
Montgomery County Library.
the old folk section.
Poetry contest this year, and it's a really fine poem. Okay, a woman with a lot of names, Suzanne Kelly Garrison from Lovely Oakwood again.
This is not dedicated to Ed. But to Vicky. Where's Vicky? I meant to say.
Thank you.
I was trying to come up with a winter poem, and this is one that I had from last winter, which is, you may remember, was awful. So this is called St. Francis of Assisi in January. Juncos huddle in the smoke Juncos huddle in the smoke bush next to his statue. A row of dark heads bow before the calamity of winter. Their patron, St. Francis, has tipped forward from his foundation by the last ice storm, his glazed hand still cupping a cement bird. Snow crowns his tonsure and fills the hollows of his face and robe, the way ash from Pompeii covered its startled victims. At dusk I see that some larger animals, fleeing deer perhaps, have bounded by, pitching him now into the arms of the roses. I venture out for the first time all day to set him right, throwing thistle and sunflower seed to his unseen flock. Back inside, unlacing my boots, I watch the storm weigh wet and heavy against his stooped shoulders. Deeper into the evening, a thud from the garden tells me he's face down now, in the snow, far from the sun of Tuscany. I drag him to the garage, heavy as a mafia victim in cement shoes. Where he will wait it out among fishing poles, rudders, and life preservers.
And Suzanne has written a wonderful novel called Stolen Child.
It fits in any,
Nice stocking stuffer, she says. I know you can buy it right steak. Can you buy it at Epic?
Yes, very soon.
Very soon?
Yeah.
All right, good. A poet from Cedarville, Ohio, Julie Moore.
As I was driving here this evening and coming down Grinnell, I was thinking, what poem should I read tonight? Because I brought my book, Particular Scandals, with me, which was published last year. And two does ran out in front of me, so I thought, oh, I need to read Buck for my book. The wild has come to your door, a buck with a rack elaborate as a labyrinth, curving into dead ends, approaching the road you drive on, considering perhaps the lilies of the field across the way, threatening to bolt, hurl his heavy heart onto your hood. He stands there, staring at you as you pass, turning your head toward him like he's called you by name, a name you have long since forgotten and can't believe he knows.
This is going by too fast. The next poet is from Dayton, formerly of Yellow Springs, Kathy Austin.
I am reading a poem that I got in Mock Turtle Scene. If you don't know about this journal, it's Dayton-based and really very well done. There's also a lot of art and photography in it too. And it should be out in the atrium and it's free, so take one. Where the wind lives. This is the wind's home. It does not belong to you, or to the house you built, or to the little trees you planted in the yard with their neat circular borders. The wind cracks branches that plummet to the ground, gouge the grass, sprawl flat and lifeless. Hanging pots and wind chimes writhe and twist, ring and clamor, strain at flimsy chains. The wind moans and screams and howls, and the house creaks, doors banging shut, shutters whipping against the windows, and small bits of shingled roof fly off, join the wind, scoot down the yard, slap against the fence. Later, People open their doors, wander onto the lawn, slowly pick up debris, drag out a ladder to fix the roof. They think the wind is gone. The wind, meanwhile, does what it wants.
Also from Yellow Springs, Maxine Scuba.
I'll make it a little longer because I have 2 poems to share. Okay. I've had a lot of jobs, and so I decided to start writing poems about some of these jobs. So this is job number 60. But it's kind of serious. It was a serious job. I raced down the city streets behind the police car with all its red and blue lights blasting into the night. We fly down the streets, going faster than the speed limit, for we are on a mission. Nothing stands in our way, even amber traffic lights that have turned red by the time I pass under them. I follow close behind, heading towards the hospital, melding into a sense of righteousness. For some of the evening, I am part of the police force, doing the right thing, rescuing the reluctant needy. Tonight's woman needs her meds, so she won't prance naked down the street or bite off her brother's finger again. One woman lost her toes to frostbite after running away from me into the wintry night, found by the police the next day. Then it was too late to salvage them, the toes, that is. It does take its toll, those extremities of life. There is a gradual, imperceptible numbing of my heart. So when my thoughts return to that job, I remember the race to the hospital, the part that felt like play. So this second poem is called Factions. What is love when it changes? Does it become like or hate? Or love-hate? What is a fact when it turns to fiction? A faction? A fictic? We need more names for things. No one will mind. Then I could say I walked a path paved with factions. And others would understand and even tell me the times they had walked the same trail. And where is the world where wishes become facts, solid like the rocks near the sea, never ever getting smashed into pebbles, at least not while we're alive? Where is the world that exists before I regret that my wishes have come true?
Well, it's getting near the end. Our last poet of the evening is also from Oakwood. Must be something about the water. Anyway, he was named Ohio Poet of the Year by the Ohio Poetry Association. David Garrison.
Thank you, Ed. I'm going to read a winter poem. It's about nature and human nature, I guess. It's called Terre Haute. I hugged a girl in Terre Haute, caressed inside her overcoat one winter night out by the quarry. We sneaked away from home and kissed like secret lovers in a story, but it was mainly lust we wrote on slabs of limestone. Moonlight fished with silver poles as throat to throat we tangled up and barely spoke. She held my body to her own and squeezed until we stood so close that steam was rising, or was it smoke? It's a wonder that the snow beneath us didn't melt. Those persimmon lips of hers were haute cuisine, unbuttoned sweater haute couture. Our noses nearly froze, but we were hot in Terre Haute. I feel better about winter now. Thank you all. Almost no poet I asked to attend. This is the third year. We've not repeated a poet yet. I'm thinking the 5th year would be good to ask some veterans back. We'll have to have a lottery or something. But almost no one I ask refuses. And I can guarantee them that you will be attended to very carefully. Every word. So what an audience. A hand for this audience. Glen Helen wants to join us. I'll bet we'll do it again next year, Krista.
Hopefully, yeah.
See you around this time next year. Oh, yeah, I'll be 64.